SimCity was once the most popular city builder out there, but now the series is over. Where did it go and why did it just vanish? In this video we'll explore the game that never could be, SimCity. SimCity is a city building video game franchise that was originally designed by Will Wright. The SimCity titles are real-time management and construction simulators, and in most of the SimCity games, the player acts as the city mayor and gets given an empty map to begin with and must expand the city with a limited budget. The first game in the franchise was released in 1989 and sold roughly 300,000 copies for PC and about 2 million copies for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. The games won several awards and they single-handedly began a new era for city building simulators. SimCity was during what can only be described as its prime time in the late 90s and early 2000s. The release of the misleadingly named SimCity 2000 in 1994 and SimCity 4 in 2003 were highly influential games that were both very well received by critics and players. During its peak, SimCity encountered unprecedented success. By just 1999, the franchise achieved 5 million sales, becoming one of the most sold games of the decade. This trend continued in the early 2000s with the release of SimCity 4. Even today, the game remains one of the best city builders thanks to it being easy to use. Clearly, the late 90s and early 2000s were a golden age for the franchise, with high quality games being released one after another. SimCity's reign would not remain without some competition for long. It wasn't the first ever city building simulator, but it popularised the genre, leading to more games wanting a piece of the success. For one, you had SimCity's biggest competitor, City Skylines, releasing in 2015. The success of City Skylines was boosted by the terrible reception of EA's attempted reboot from 2012 to 2014. The two games were compared and competed for players for years after City Skylines' release, with Cities eventually emerging as the victor. SimCity had a few more competitors, none as majorly threatening as cities, but threatening nevertheless. Some examples are Anno 2070, a futuristic city building game from Ubisoft, Blue Byte and Related Designs; Cytopia, an open source pixel art city building game; Kingdoms Reborn, a game where you build up a colony, and trade and attract residents to your town in your quest to prosperity. Unfortunately, due to the poor reception of the reboot we previously mentioned, and we'll talk about further later in the video, SimCity's player counts fell, making room for the rise of its major competitors. And so began the demise of SimCity. Before we move on, only a small percentage of people who watch my videos are actually subscribed, so if you're enjoying so far, make sure to subscribe. Anyway, back to the video. In the early 2010s, the SimCity franchise was struggling. A new game, SimCity, was announced in 2012 and released in 2013 as Maxis and EA desperately attempted to revive the series. SimCity performed poorly to say the least. It was heavily criticised and even removed from sale on Amazon temporarily. It was so heavily criticised that EA promised players one free game from their library as compensation. On paper, the game seemed incredible. You'd be able to build a city and compete or cooperate with your friends and family, but in practice it was buggy and messy. The game was riddled with bugs on release, and players were struck with lengthy loading times, and the fact that the game required players to be online at all times. Latency problems occurred across the player base, and crashes were frequent. The players were furious. The game's mobile counterpart, SimCity BuildIT, performed exceptionally however. It received over 100 million downloads and was the most downloaded game in the entire SimCity franchise. Clearly, it put the PC version to shame. Unbeknownst to the team at Maxis, just 1 year after the release of SimCity BuildIT, possibly the most popular city builder ever, City Skylines was released. This put the final nail in the coffin of SimCity. The two games were constantly compared, and while SimCity may have had the upper hand when City Skylines first released, it soon overtook SimCity, leaving it completely in the dust. Player counts for SimCity were already low, and with more and more players choosing the more advanced and more frequently updated City Skylines, SimCity lost their devoted player base. There are still players who play SimCity today, but that number is far from what it used to be. This can be attributed to one of three reasons. Firstly, as we just talked about, their competition simply took over. This was helped by the second reason, a lack of updates. Maxis, the developers of SimCity, closed their studio in 2015. Many people believe this was due to the poor performance of the last major game in the franchise, but we can't be sure. The final reason I believe caused the downfall of SimCity is EA's general impact on games. EA purchased Maxis in 1997, and EA have been notorious for destroying well-known franchises. An example of this is F1. Many people consider that the F1 game franchise was destroyed by EA taking over just a couple of years ago. The same effect could very well have been had on SimCity. In the most recent games, there was certainly a conflict of interests between EA and Maxis, which may have made the development more challenging. What do you think? Did you once enjoy playing SimCity? Do you still? Make sure to let me know down in the comments. But that's all the time we have for today. If you did enjoy, make sure to leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!